Imagine living without it, without it. So let's go. Heaven is worth fighting for, you know. I've been standing right next to you, next to you. Oh, I know it won't be easy, but it's true. We will regret what we didn't do, what we didn't do.
In here we have the first ever Mercedes GLB. This is the 2020 Mercedes GLB. They have never made this model before. It is positioned between the GLC and the GLA. And on the left side of it we have the 2020 Mercedes GLC. Now if you walked into a dealership and you saw these two right beside each other, the first question that's going to come up is, what's the difference between these two? And that's the goal for today's video. We're going to find out how they compare, what do they offer, and maybe which one is the best out of the two. For today's video, special thanks goes to our good friends at Performance Mercedes, a Mercedes dealership located in St. Catherine, Ontario, Canada. They were kind enough to put this two together for me to review for you, in case if you're looking for one of this to buy. If you want to know more about their dealership, the link will be in the description box, and of course their Instagram account. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe and like, and hit the notification bell for the upcoming videos. Also, if you want to know the new videos, follow me on Instagram or Facebook, where I usually post the upcoming videos. Now, let's start and review this too. The next question you might have is the price. Which one is the most expensive out of the two? The GLC in Canada starts at about $48,000. Meanwhile, the GLB starts at about $43,000. In terms of trims, at the moment for the GLB, they only offer the 250 4MATIC. Meanwhile, on the GLC, you can go up to an AMG high performance version, or if you don't like that kind of design, you can pick the GLC Coupe. The models that we have for today's video are the GLC 300 and the GLB 250. That is the lowest trim you can purchase for the GLC, and this is the only, at the moment, trim that you can purchase in Canada and United States. In the future, they will offer an AMG version, a 35 model. And of course, it's going to cost you a little bit more, and it will make more horsepower. Now, what do they offer under the hood? The GLB under the hood has a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, produces 221 brake horsepower. It has a fuel capacity of 15.9 gallons. Meanwhile, the 2020 GLC 300 has a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that produces 255 brake horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. A little bit more torque compared to the GLB, which is 258 pound-feet of torque. The GLC has a bigger fuel capacity compared to the GLB at 17.4 gallons. Another noticeable difference between the two of them is actually the rear side design. If you look carefully, this one is flat compared to this, which looks more like a hatchback rather than an SUV style. And if you go for the coupe version, it is of course different than this model. Which one do I like the most? I kind of like this style because it looks like a small SUV and it's completely flat. On this side, it looks more like a hatchback. Now, one advantage that this vehicle has over the GLC is actually the cargo space. And with this model, you'll be able to purchase a 3rd row seat, of course, with an extra charge. And the one that we have for today's video actually offers a 3rd row seat. The problem is that if you fold back the 3rd row seat, you'll get less space, of course. Another difference between the two of them is actually how far the tailgate opens. So if I get closer to this, as you can see, I'm not even touching the tailgate. So it's really wide open. Meanwhile, on this side, not so much. The GLB, with this package that we have for today's video, comes with a roof rack, something that the GLC doesn't have at the moment. Now, the next question you might have, if you're a family person, is the space inside. Are they any different? Well, right now I'm sitting in the GLB, and quite spacious. I have quite a lot of headroom as well. One thing to remember is the 3rd row seat. Definitely not for adults. It's mostly for pets or kids if you have, and you can use that space, or in case of emergency and you need to use it for a single person, you probably will. But again, not very useful. I tried to get into the third row seat and is almost impossible. And at the same time, I'm 6'2", so it's hard for someone my height. But overall in here, it's quite comfortable. In terms of technology with this package, we don't have any heated seats on the rear side. We only have the vents in the center. And this is equipped with a split panoramic roof. So you have the big one in the front, and then you have one over here, which of course comes with a sunshade, and you can open it automatically if you want to get some sunlight. This model that we have for today's video is equipped with suede leather interior, beautiful red stitches as well, give it a sporty design. But other than that, this is pretty much standard. Now, let's jump onto the GLC and see if it's any different compared to this. Even in here, you still get quite a lot of leg room, headroom as well. The way this thing is shaped at the top, it's more curved rather than flat like the GLB. So it gives you a little bit more, you can notice, of a headroom, which of course it is good for people my height. In terms of technology with this package, we don't get anything. We have no heated seats or any extra features. We do have 2 vents in the front, similar of course to the GLB. In terms of the interior, this offers standard leather interior. Of course, if you want something fancier, of course you can upgrade to a different package and get different leather interior. But overall, in terms of space, nice and comfortable. This also offers you the same panoramic roof that you get in the GLB, which of course it is split in half. So you have the big one in the front and a tiny one in the back, equipped with the standard sunshades, which of course you can open them. Now, let's jump into the front, and let's start first with the GLC. Now let's talk about what they offer inside. The first difference between the two of them is actually interior. The design of the GLC is very similar to the previous models, the 2019 models. You have this 3 vents in the center and similar design, but they have of course brought in new user interface. You have a new infotainment system and of course a new cluster as well. The model that we have today for the GLC uses a standard non-digital cluster. It does have a screen in the center which shows you the information. Meanwhile, in the infotainment system is very similar to the one that we have for the GLB. It is the new user interface, and of course it is a touch screen, and then you have a trackpad where you can operate the infotainment system. You can also operate the infotainment system through the scroll button located onto the steering wheel. Very smart, and of course very user friendly, because you don't have to reach into this area in order to operate the infotainment system if you want to find out something. And of course on the other side it has another touch button similar to the right side where you can operate information for the cluster. As far as technology, the model we have for today's video offers heated seats. You have a 360 camera. It offers a new infotainment system, and of course you have a wireless charging pad located onto the center. It also offers dynamic modes where you can change Sport, Sport Plus, Sport, Comfort, Individual, and Eco mode. And of course we'll be testing them out once we take this on a test drive on the highway. Now onto the GLB. Well, first of all, as you can see, the interior design, it is completely different to the GLC. You still get 3 air vents in the front, they're just different shape. And at the same time, now the cluster and the infotainment system display, it's almost in one, but it is of course split in half in order to split the information. This one offers you a full digital cluster where you can of course adjust it and change based on the driving modes. A similar design used in other vehicles, so for example the CLA, which we reviewed recently, has similar interior. This one is equipped of course with paddle shifters as well. You have heated seats on the front, and you have power seats for both sides, and of course usual like the Mercedes, you have the settings located onto the door panel. This uses a touchscreen system, and you have the touchpad located into the center to control the infotainment system. One thing that is different in this vehicle is this little thing that you see in the center, which is used for your hand to rest on when you operate the trackpad in the infotainment in the center for the infotainment system. The steering wheel is very similar on both vehicles. You have those touch buttons located at the top to operate the infotainment system, and of course for the cluster as well. You can change all the settings, you get more information in this vehicle, and of course a beautiful layout for the cluster. The GLB with this package doesn't offer a power steering column. You have to adjust it manually. Meanwhile, in the GLC, it is powered and it has a button located onto the left side that you can adjust it. I've covered everything you need to know about these two models. Now it's time to take them on the road and see how they do, how they drive, and of course how comfortable they are. We will do our usual tests for the cabin noise and the driver assistant package to see how they handle. And if you haven't subscribed by now, please do so. The GLC feels a little bit heavier, and it is heavier actually compared to the GLB. What I love about this car, that I'm not the biggest fan of the GLB, is the sitting position. I felt a bit uncomfortable in the GLB. In here, I feel much more comfortable, and at the same time, this thing is not very high off the base of the vehicle, so you're still able to stretch your legs. Also, in the GLC, you have way more ways to adjust your seat, and of course your headrest as well. In the standard model for the GLB, you can only adjust the seat and the recliner. But in the GLB, you have a system called Seating Kinetics, which basically helps the seats in the front and adjust based on the driving mode and how the car is doing on the road in terms of the level, in terms of the bumpy roads. So it fixes itself in terms of the seating position and of course the recliner as well. A very unique to that model. In here, I don't seem to have it. In there, it automatically turns on once you sit inside, and it actually shows you into the screen what is actually doing. So that's one difference between the two of them in terms of the comfort level inside here. As far as visibility, because this is of course different design, I find it to be as good as the one in the GLB. You still have space onto the side. The only difference is mostly on the passenger side, on the rear side, is because the door and the actual window on the GLB is slightly bigger and more square compared to this one. So if you turn your head this way, you have a bit of a gap in here where you can't see much compared to the GLB, which is a little bit wider. But both vehicles will offer you blind spot assist, so in some cases you can definitely rely on the blind spot system. In terms of the power delivery, the GLB uses a dual clutch transmission, and I tested it out. It is quite smooth and it is very quick. Technically, specs show that the GLB is actually slower than the GLC by about 0.7 seconds or so, but the difference on the highway is not very noticeable. When you overtake, the only difference in the GLC is that you have Sports and Sport Plus for better enhancement driving. In terms of the comfort level, both vehicles are very similar in the suspension side. The difference is mostly how the suspension system is set up in the GLB compared to the GLC. In terms of the interior, the GLC feels a little bit more archaic. The GLB feels more futuristic and slightly better inside. I love the new interior. In this, it feels a bit archaic, very old style, and it reminds me of the older Mercedes. Now, I understand the infotainment system is upgraded from the older model, but the cluster that they could have at least offered a full digital cluster. This is just going backwards. The transmission in the GLB feels like it's faster compared to the one in the GLC. Now, that is a dual clutch transmission. This, on the other hand, uses a 9-speed G-tronic, which is not the same as the one that they use in the 8-speed automatic transmission. But it's not, of course, a massive difference, but you notice once you drive them back to back, the GLB dual clutch transmission is very quick, and when you're shifting, it's very impressive. There's barely any gap between shifting. Now, The GLB is a front-wheel drive bias, meanwhile the GLC, it's a rear-wheel drive bias. What that means is that most of the power in the GLB is delivered into the front wheels, meanwhile in the GLC to the rear wheels. But they're both all-wheel drive system. That means that you have the 4MATIC on both vehicles standard. So if you're worried about snow time, don't bother, because both vehicles will be able to pull you out any heavy snow areas. Now, in terms of the comfort level, I do like the GLC a little bit more. I feel more comfortable here for someone my height, especially on the driver's side. In terms of the interior layout, the buttons, the infotainment system, they're both very similar. I mean, for the infotainment system, you have three options. You have touchscreen, you have touch button on the steering wheel, and you have a trackpad as well in here, which will help you operate the infotainment system if you're stopped. But if you're on a highway and you quickly want to use the infotainment system, you can do so with the button located onto the right side. Meanwhile, on the left side is used for the cluster, the information. We did our usual test as far as the cabin noise, and both vehicles are very similar. The GLB was 64.3 dB. Meanwhile, the GLC was around 64 area. So they're not very far from each other in terms of the cabin noise. Mercedes does a great job overall with their vehicles to make sure that it's well isolated inside. Now, the question that some of you might have is, which one would I get? Because I like performance vehicles, I will go with the GLC, but I wouldn't even go with the GLC standard that we have. I would go for the GLC Coupe. That is, of course, my preference. But between the two of them, I think the GLB is better for day-to-day use, because first, if you have a family, you have a third row seat, and you have a little bit more space in the back with the third row seat down. If you don't need the third row seat and you find that the GLC satisfies your needs in terms of space and technology, then the GLC could be your option. But I'd say for day-to-day use, the GLB is my preferred vehicle, and I like the interior design. Now, if I want to step up into more performance, then definitely have to go with the GLC at the moment, because the GLB does not offer any high performance as of now. In the future, they will offer models that are a high performance, like the 35 series. My preference out of the two will be the GLB in terms of interior, in terms of space, and I kind of like the exterior design as well. It looks nice in the back. It looks nice in the front as well, with that AMG package that you can, of course, purchase separately. I love the overall design in the front. So that was it for today. If you have any specific questions that I haven't answered, please let me know. Leave a comment in the section below, and I'll be happy to help you. Special thanks goes to our good friends at Performance Mercedes for allowing me to borrow these two vehicles and compare them for you. That was it. Be safe, people. Cheers.